Hi, I'm going to go over the orderIT trade activity for October the 10th, 2020. Going to go through each one of them one by one. As you can see, there's roughly 13 trades that were tripped. 10 of them were short sells and 3 of them were buys. We'll go through each one of them to see the results. So we have CBS, which 1%, that's adequate drop for a good indication of a downward operation. We can see that the trade trigger is above the closing, so it means that was a positive trade. And the analysis of the stock roughly shows that it was moving down in the morning, but not drastically OBV wise. MACD though was showing a very strong downward trend early morning, came back in the afternoon and then dropped again in the afternoon. So afternoon it was mostly downward trend. DI was showing somewhat a negative downward trend across the whole day, and as the Bollinger Band is indication that it was dropping to the day. So this was a positive result. It was traded. BA, the Boeing company. As you can see, it dropped quite a bit. 3.5%, and early morning it's showing it's dropped again. So the aspect that's showing 184.18 at the trigger and 182.15 at closing, and morning is actually showing 181. So this would have been a positive trade for sure. Just check the analysis of it. Yeah, OBV definitely just showing a drop. Late afternoon, it looked like it somewhat stabilized and came up a little bit at the end of the day. And MACD was actually showing that quite positively at the end of the day. It actually reversed. BI showing the same thing, even though the whole day until the end of the day it was showing somewhat a negative drop. In Bollinger Band, as you can see, it did have a little bit of a positive. As you can see, the trip was up around here, and you can see the negative point, and by the end of the day, you were still down. And as I stated initially, it was actually dropping early morning too, so this would have been a positive trade too. Short sell. The one aspect that is a good indication, general-wise, is the indicator marks. Dow was down, Nasdaq was down. Across the board, it was down. So Dow and Nasdaq are the two main ones. As you can see, they were showing some of the negative downward trend. Canadian Solar Incorporated. This one is not positive. In general, it was showing a 465 at roughly 1157. So 1157 around here it did get up to above that, but the end result is was up. At the end of the day, it actually just stabilized. As you can see, it stabilized or moved sideways during the afternoon, but it did pull up. So we can say that that is a almost positive movement. But at the end of the day, result would not have been, that you could sell it in a day and make money off of it. But checking indicators, OBV showing that it was moving okay in the morning, but then moved down to more of a negative downward trend. MACD showing somewhat the same type of thing. DI showing the same thing, even though DI is actually back and forth, but it was showing again positive in the morning. And then the day was positive. Bollinger Band again, just showing that it was moving sideways. So again, that's a somewhat sideways movement in general. So you could have made money, but you would have had to monitor and get out, before the end of the day, because as you can see, the end of the day, it actually closed lower than the trigger price. Another short sell again. Honeywell International, HON, 198, 93, 193. Okay, so this one's showing by the end of the day. This is actually down from the trigger price. So if you bought around trigger price, you would have a positive trade. So that would have been another positive trade. So. Interesting, it was actually showing strong OBV activity, which is interesting. It was down for the most part, but the afternoon was showing that it was moving upwards, so it was moving positive upwards. At the end of the day, it was starting to come down again, so I guess even OBV is showing that it was moving down, and MACD is showing that it's moving down. DI showing that it's indicating that it was moving negative for the most part of the day. So that same type of thing in the afternoon, it looked like it did pop up a bit, but it was moving down. And the end result is that it came down, stabilized in the afternoon, and then came down a bit in the end. But again, if you caught it when it was tripped, it would still have been a positive trade. Go to the next trade. COG, Cabot Oil and Gas Corporation. This is actually showing that it was moving positive, but it tripped negative. So you can see there's a few dips in here, which is probably what caused it to trip as a negative. We can see that it came up at the end of the day, and I don't think there was really any negatives below that by much. So yeah, see, it somewhat came up. So this one would have been not a sell. Not a positive trade. Take a look at the analysis to see if there's any kind of strong indication. And OBV moving sideways, a bit down in the morning, then moving sideways. And then the day it was actually making a recovery. MACD. Actually, MACD was showing more positive than negative. DI actually was showing more negative than positive. And today, though, you can see DI is showing that it was moving positive at the end of the day, and Bollinger Band again, same type of thing. It was somewhat roughly moving sideways, and then today it came up. So that would have not been a positive trade if it was done. Next trade, AZUL. Azul SA, it was down 1.5%. It looked like it closed roughly where the trigger price was, so that is potentially a so-so, even though, yeah, see, that's a so-so, and it just moved sideways, so that would have been a so-so because of the aspect of it not being 100%, positive, and no real indication or point in the day that would have been a possible selling operation or closing operation. OBV showing it was moving down in the morning, came up a little bit and down again, so moving back and forth a bit, but again down below zero, so it was showing a negative trend. MACD also showing a negative trend in general, even though morning it was up, early afternoon, and MACD is actually showing it fluctuating back and forth. DI actually was showing it fairly strongly negative for most of the day, so that's the thing. And again, Bollinger Band, indication-wise, Bollinger Band is showing sideways movement, but roughly around this time is where it indicated, so it was moving down. Okay, so I'll say that is a potential, but not concrete. Excuse me. This is another short, and it actually was up above the trigger price. No, sorry, it was down. Trigger 267.20 and it closed at 265. This would have been another positive trade because the end of the day it actually is definitely down. It did look like it was bouncing back and forth and somewhat stabilized by the end of the day. That OBV, as you can see, was showing that it was coming down roughly the whole day. MACD, morning positive, in the afternoon down, and again stabilized. MACD showing it somewhat stabilized at the end of the day. VI mostly negative at the end of the day. Beginning of the day was actually showing more positive, so that's a question mark. Bollinger Band was actually showing it moving downwards for the day. It would have been positive, but the actual analysis is, by the end of the day, you can see the analysis was a bit fluctuating, so it's an aspect of the day was bouncy. Excuse me. This is another buy on a stock that actually ended the day down. 1085s, 1072, so that would not have been a positive by end of day. 135. 1088. This is somewhat a so-so because the aspect is it did move above the indicator price, but not by much. But it didn't go down by much either, so the trade itself was stable. It's just that's not 100% a positive outcome. And this is Inovio Pharmaceuticals, another pharmaceuticals company. As you can see, OBV is actually showing strong movement, so it was moving positive OBV-wise, so volume was moving good, positive. MACD, there's no confirmation. It was basically mostly negative, actually, during the MACD indicator. DI, positive in the morning, a bit negative in the afternoon. By the end of the day, it came back positive. Bollinger Band again shows it was moving up, somewhat went sideways, then it moved up. So We'll mark this as a so-so trade. Nike, NKE, moving down, not by much though. It was by the end of the day down, so technically this was a positive trade by the end of the day result. As you can see, the trigger is at 127.83 and it ended at 127.66, so it actually was down. The analysis is showing OBV down. MACD, it actually reverted, and then the day it actually started to come back up, so that's interesting. DI, most of the day DI was down, so DI is showing down, and Bollinger Band showing down, and the day it kind of reverted a bit, so it was a positive outcome, but a little bit of fluctuation on the MACD side. Well, not so much fluctuation, kind of a reversal on MACD, but morning it showed, or early afternoon it showed negative, but late afternoon it showed a positive. So that's interesting. The averages started to revert. COP 35.40, 35.28, and morning actually was down, so this is actually another positive for sure, because by the end of the day it was down. Check out the analysis charts. OBV again, yes, showing it very down. MACD, interestingly enough, afternoon was showing a positive, which may have been in relationship to volume, was actually moving sideways in the afternoon, and the MACD is actually showing that it was actually increasing average-wise. And DI, same thing, but as you can see, DI is showing it was negative for the most part during the whole day. It did come up at the end of the day, which seems to be standard across the board, and Bollinger Band showing the same thing, but the end result, it was actually down by the end of the day from the trigger price, so that's another positive trade. ELY, Callaway Golf, down by 5.5%, so again that moved down 1718, 1709, so end of day it was actually down from the indicating point. Check the analysis graphs. OBV is definitely showing downward movements by the end of the day. Morning moving sideways, end of the day definitely moving down. MACD, interesting, MACD is showing bouncing back a little bit, back and forth, but it was negative a good portion of the day. It did revert and actually coming back up in the day. DI actually showing somewhat very good negative across the day, and again the end of the day showing it moving upwards. Bollinger Band down. You see, at the end of the day it was actually moving sideways, which kind of correlates to the aspect that the indicators were showing somewhat a reversal. So it could have been by the time it got past the closing that it was starting to come back up, but by the end of the day it was down, so that was again another positive trade. Diamondback Energy down 2.5%, 32.96, 32.85. So it technically was down at the end of the day from when it was tripped. So that could be a potential positive trade. Let's check the analysis graphs. It was down, but moving sideways a bit in the afternoon. Came down mid-afternoon, and then actually reverted at the end of the day. As you can see, it was coming back at the end of the day. MACD showing the same thing, bouncing back and forth. Afternoon down, which we were tripped. DI actually was showing. DI showing back and forth, so that's interesting. The Bollinger Band somewhat again showing moving back and forth a little bit. Afternoon it was moving sideways and the day was moving back, but again it was triggered at a price higher than close, so that technically is still a positive trade. And this is a buy opportunity, and this is actually up a lot. Well, a lot. 5 3/4, actually 5 3/4%. That's actually very good. Them 71, them 75. So technically, that's another positive trade as it closed above its open, or closed above its closed above its trigger price. And I'll just check to see what the graph is showing. End of the day. It was tripped very much at the end of the day, which is right around here. It's moving up. It somewhat stayed moving up at the end of the day. DI actually showing it bouncing back and forth. So that's interesting. That DI. The morning and the early afternoon, it was actually positive, and then at the end of the day, it seemed to revert a little bit, came back a little bit, and then the end of the day showing that the end result, the end of the day was moving upwards. Bollinger Band definitely showing upwards. So that's another positive trade. So with respect to that, we had 13 trades. 2 were somewhat questionable that they couldn't be, validated that they would have been out. 1, absolutely no indication that you would have had a positive trade, and 10 positive trades by the end of the day. So we're talking a percentage-wise 77% positive outcomes that could have come from yesterday. So that's a fairly good result. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.